Final Destination, the franchise that made you afraid of airplanes, logging trucks, speedways, roller coasters, and just about everything else, is back in movie theaters now, which would be great if the franchise hadn't also made you afraid of movie theaters. This episode's brought to you by Mando. Go to shopmando.com and use code DAN for a special offer, and stay tuned after the episode for more info. Hello everybody, I'm Dan Murrell, here with my review of Final Destination Bloodlines, which is in theaters now, and I have to say up front that I have a soft spot for this franchise. I saw the first Final Destination in theaters when I was 17 years old, and it still remains one of my favorite theater-going experiences of all time. The energy in that screening was so great because we hadn't really seen anything like that before, and I've kept up with the franchise in the years since, and it's been disappointing that there's been such a gap between the last movie, which was Final Destination 5, a movie that I think did a really cool thing with the whole concept of the series. Final Destination's strengths as a franchise are also, I think, what make the movies harder and harder to make, because the villain can't be killed. The villain is death. You don't have to explain how it keeps coming back movie after movie, which is good, but you do have to come up with more creative ways for death to take out its victims. If this was a standard horror movie franchise, then this would probably have been the movie that unites all of the survivors from the previous cast, kind of a legacy sequel, introduce the new generation. But that's not how it works, because the premise of the franchise dictates that you start over every single movie with a completely new cast, and there are precious few survivors when it comes to those new people. Really, Tony Todd, rest in peace, as Bloodworth, is the closest thing this franchise has to a consistent, repeating cast of characters. So really, many of the other things that other horror movies have to worry about, Final Destination doesn't have to. But the lesser movies in the franchise have either taken the concept for granted or taken it way too seriously. And I think that the reason that Final Destination Bloodlines works is that it is able to walk that very fine line between knowing what kind of movie this is and still making us care, or making us believe that the characters care somewhat about what's going on. As all Final Destination movies do, Bloodlines opens with a premonition about a disaster, this one at the opening of a Space Needle-type restaurant tower, but this time the survival of those who are supposed to die echoes across generations, touching an untold number of people and potentially tying the entire franchise together. There are heavy hints that all of the previous disasters we've seen may trace back to this one. Caitlin Santawana plays Stephanie, who, in a break from tradition, is not the person who saw Death's plan and escaped, but is tied to that person and has to figure out what's going on before Death targets her and her family. What follows is exactly what you come to expect from a Final Destination movie: elaborate, cleverly executed death sequences as the number of survivors is slowly whittled down and those who are left grow more and more desperate in their attempts to cheat Death again. The Final Destination series has gotten progressively more graphic, more brutal as time has gone on, but it hasn't yet crossed that line over into gore porn, as I think I've said before. It's just this side of the line, but it hasn't crossed that line yet. That doesn't mean, however, that the deaths in this movie are disappointing. There are mutilations, there are limbs being removed, there are heads being crushed, there are bodies getting squeezed into places where bodies aren't meant to be squeezed. And looking at the deaths in the movie, and I actually just rewatched the deaths from all of the movies, I think that there are a few in this film that are top 10 material for the franchise overall. As an audience member, knowing that these characters are marked for an almost inescapable death gives you the license not to worry about them too much. The interest isn't in whether they'll survive, but in how they'll be killed. And if that's the kind of quasi-moral quandary as a viewer that turns you off, well, then this franchise isn't really for you. As with most of the movies in the Final Destination franchise, the cast of the film is capable but not exceptional. Caitlin Santajuana is great at looking afraid and often bewildered, and most of the rest of the cast, let's be honest, is cannon fodder. Max Lloyd Jones is a main standout among the potential victims, bringing a swagger and a defiance that I think the best victims in this series have. The exception among the average cast is Tony Todd, who sadly passed away last year and makes his final appearance as Bloodworth, the man who knows all of Death's rules. Tony Todd filmed this role obviously sick with the illness that took his life, and it gives his appearance in the film so much more poignance, and it's not an empty appearance. It's a well-written role for him. Again, I think he knew, and probably the creators of the film knew, that this would be his last appearance in the franchise, but it also recontextualizes his role in the franchise. It's his biggest role to date. And it's really sad to think about the fact that if this series keeps going, and I think that it probably will, that we won't see Tony Todd in future films, because for me, he's always been a highlight of each of the movies. He, as an actor, understands the tone of the franchise and exactly what he's there to do. The direction of the movie from Zach Lipovsky and Adam B. Stein feels like work from people who are fans of these movies. They're aware of how to misdirect, build tension, release the tension, and design kills that often come in unexpected ways or at unexpected times. The screenplay from Laurie Evans Taylor and Ready or Not and screenwriter Guy Busick doesn't reinvent the wheel, but does have a humor and a genuine attempt at world building that I think other scripts in the Final Destination franchise have lacked. One of the great things about the 14-year layoff since Final Destination 5 is that it seems like technology has finally caught up to this movie's aspirations. I think one of the things about the other films that's always felt a little bit off is that they want to do these big disaster sequences, but they never really had the budget or the ability to make them look convincing, other than, I think, the plane crash in the first movie and the logging truck disaster in the second movie. The bridge sequence actually was also pretty good. But Final Destination Bloodlines is able to stage its big disaster sequence at the beginning of the movie. It doesn't look particularly cheap. It actually looks pretty impressive. And the deaths as well look really good. You can tell that there are computer effects, etc. But this doesn't look as cheap as a lot of the other movies in the franchise have, and I think that that works to its credit. Final Destination films have always had a floor for me as a fan. There's a minimum amount that I'm going to enjoy each movie, and then, of course, you can go above that. And the great thing about Final Destination Bloodlines is that I think it rises above that floor by a fairly significant amount. It doesn't reinvent anything, and it does drag at times, but it delivers exactly what you want from a Final Destination film, with a couple of extra surprises along the way. So when we're looking at this on my personal scale, I'm confident in putting Final Destination Bloodlines squarely in the it's good category. It is exactly what you want and a little bit more. And as I mentioned, Final Destination Bloodlines is in theaters now. So those are my thoughts on the movie. What did you think? Have you already seen it? Let me know down in the comments below. And before we go, I'm going to thank the sponsor for this review, Mando. I don't know about you, but I'm happy that it's spring and I can be outside again, taking a walk, hanging out with friends, mowing the lawn, minus the whole mowing the lawn part. And when I'm outside all day, it's important to have a deodorant that lasts as long as I do. Luckily, I found Mando. I'm a sweater, and I don't mean the garment, and nothing is worse than making a day of it outside and worrying that my deodorant is going to quit before I do. But I don't have to worry about that with Mando because it keeps me smelling fresh all day long, no matter how long that day is. Especially because I like to use a combo of Mando's cleansing bar in the shower, solid deodorant afterwards, and a spritz of their spray deodorant to top it all off. Mando's safe to use anywhere on your body and was created by a doctor who saw how body odor was being mishandled. All Mando products are baking soda free and paraben free, and they come in a variety of scents. My personal favorite is Mount Fuji, but I've tried them all and they smell great. And you know what? So do I. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like a mini body wash or deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for fans of the show, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with my exclusive code that equates to over 40% off your starter pack when you use code DAN at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Please support the show and tell them that I sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. Thanks to Mando for sponsoring this review, and thank you for watching. I will be back in the studio later this week. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.